Right then guys, and here I am with my first career mode related video on F1 22. For any regular viewers, I want to say up front that this isn't the all 10 seasons of career mode video, even though it does go through all 10 seasons of a My Team career mode on F1 22. That video is coming up later and it will be on a totally different game save to this one, because whilst the all seasons videos are essentially about me just letting the game do its own thing and seeing what happens, for this game save I was deliberately trying to get the craziest driver transfers possible. I know what the title of this video is, and if you're not subscribed to this channel and don't actually care about the explanation why, or the specifics of what I experienced, or my own opinion on the game's Acclaim system, and all you want is the answer, then here it is. If you want the most amount of driver transfers and the best chance of seeing some truly wild driver and team pairings, then you'll want to increase the team Acclaim earning rates, but reduce the rate at which the drivers can earn Acclaim. Each driver has a starting Acclaim rating that goes up as the career goes on, and goes up faster the more experience and success they have. Higher rated drivers have a higher starting Acclaim rating, and the higher that Acclaim rating, the more stipulations they have in order to join a new team. That can include current car performance, the level of certain facilities, but it also always includes a requirement for a team's Acclaim rating. This is where it starts to get a bit harder to understand at first glance, since whilst you know your own team's Acclaim rating and the facilities your team has, you have no idea what position every other team is in. So the reason why a highly acclaimed driver may rarely or possibly never move team is because their personal Acclaim rating is so high that no other team can possibly have a high enough team Acclaim rating to be able to convince that driver to join them. The best example of this is that across 25 seasons on 4 separate game saves on F1 2021, I never saw Max Verstappen or Lando Norris leave their original teams. Even if you include my F1 2020 all 10 seasons of career mode video, Max Verstappen never left Red Bull there either. So that's 35 years with Red Bull. Lando Norris did eventually leave McLaren to join him there, but that was on the very last season of my F1 2020 playthrough. I've only ever personally seen Verstappen change teams once, and that was in F1 2020 where he left Red Bull for Ferrari, and that was in a totally separate career mode to the one I did for the all seasons of career mode video. Even when I tried to sign him at the end of my F1 2021 all seasons of career mode video, my own team's Acclaim rating wasn't high enough, despite the fact that we were a well-established team who had won both championships multiple times by that point. I talked about that in my F1 2021 all 10 seasons of career mode video, and for the sake of not repeating myself too much, if you want to know more about my thoughts on and experiences with the Acclaim system, then I'll link to that video and you can watch the Acclaim system discussion section of it. In essence though, the best way to get all of the drivers willing to join the greatest number of teams possible is to slow down their Acclaim earning rate, therefore making them less fussy in the long run, and making sure that teams earn Acclaim quickly so that as many teams as possible have a high enough Acclaim to convince anyone to join them. Long the short of it, that theory turned out to be correct. So correct in fact that it caught me by surprise. I wasn't even checking for mid-season driver changes when I really should have been. In F1 2021 they were a rarity and often uninteresting, not this time, as I didn't realise until after the fact that in the middle of the very first season there were 6 driver transfers. That doesn't include me not being able to retain Oscar Piastri and so switching to Robert Schwartzman. I'm talking about 6 changes involving the 10 real-life teams. They were Latifi to AlphaTauri, Tsunoda to Alfa Romeo, Ocon to Haas, Magnussen to Williams, Perez to Alpine, and Zhou Guanyu to Red Bull. Zhou got a 6th place finish in France and then 5th in Hungary in the Red Bull, and it would have been great to see how well he performed in a whole season with the team. However, for the second season there were, and this is genuinely true, 15 changes. That's not 15 including the carryovers from the middle of last season, that's 15 changes between the very end of Season 1 and the start of Season 2. In fact, the only mid-season change that stuck was Latifi AlphaTauri. That means in just one in-game year there were 21 driver changes. In fairness, this was helped by a double retirement as both Vettel and Bottas bowed out of F1 at the end of the first season. It is odd though that both Williams teammates reunited at AlphaTauri and both McLaren teammates at Ferrari. Joe left, or was kicked out of, Red Bull, and so he ended up at Haas with George Russell. Meanwhile, Esteban Ocon took over the second Red Bull seat. The final team I want to draw specific attention to is Mercedes, as they now have the near unbeatable driver pairing of Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. Leclerc won the first season's Drivers' Championship and Hamilton was crowned the champion in the second season. The Brit was hardly challenged in that second season as his closest competitors were his teammate Leclerc and Ferrari's Lando Norris, but they were both 151 points behind Hamilton at the end of the year. There were a couple of mid-season driver changes, but essentially it was just that Dan Ticktum was let go of by Aston Martin, so they brought in Piastri from Alfa Romeo, meaning the Italian team recruited Schwartzman as the replacement for the Aussie. There were a total of 8 transfers for the third season, so the market was still far from uneventful. The key moves were Lando Norris joining Verstappen at Red Bull, which is a real deja vu, and with Daniel Ricciardo retiring from Formula 1, it's now an all-Spanish lineup at Ferrari. Ferrari had the quickest car for the third season, which meant the title fight was between the two Spaniards. And it was Alonso who came out on top in the final round of the year, finally becoming a triple world champion and finally winning a driver's title with Ferrari after failing to do so on numerous occasions in the previous decade. Season 4 was a similar affair, except with Carlos Sainz emerging as the champion this time, and he did it in Brazil with a race to spare. It was around this point in the career mode that the speed and number of driver transfers started to go down. That's not to say there weren't any shocks, as Lewis Hamilton retired at the end of the third season and was replaced by Robert Schwartzman. Many of the most interesting signings did involve Mercedes, as Schwartzman was then replaced by de Ruyveler for the fifth season, except he only lasted for half a year before being replaced by Pierre Gasly. The only other particularly notable change during that same period of the career was Alex Albon joining McLaren. The fourth season was the first one not to have any mid-year moves, and there were only 3 changes for the start of the fifth season and only 1 for the sixth. From season 5 to 7, Max Verstappen won all 3 drivers' championships and Red Bull won 2 constructors' championships. Verstappen won the first 2 of those titles by a landslide, and Red Bull was so dominant in season 6 that they took a 1-2 in the drivers' championship, and that was even with Norris being over 200 points down on his teammate. Season 7 started to see the changing of the tide though, as well as the re-energizing of the driver market. Lance Stroll retired, which meant he left Alfa Romeo, and the Italian team dropped Ocon as well, which means they had an all-new lineup. Of the 8 changes for this season, the 3 most interesting ones are George Russell joining his mate Albon at McLaren, Mick Schumacher signing for Ferrari, something which may well be a glimpse into the future, but certainly it's great to see a Schumacher back at Ferrari, and most excitingly of all, Fernando Alonso, who still hasn't retired, is now driving for Mercedes. Charles Leclerc and Fernando Alonso at Mercedes is one hell of a combination. And to be fair, so is Verstappen and Norris at Red Bull, but it was around this time that Mercedes pulled themselves back into title-winning shape. As previously mentioned, Verstappen won the 7th season's Drivers' Championship, but Leclerc was less than 2 race wins worth of points away. Also, Alonso and Sainz both outscored the second Red Bull of Norris, and he got less than half the points of Verstappen, so that means Mercedes won the Constructors' Championship, not Red Bull. The 8th season was won by Charles Leclerc at Mercedes as he had a 101-point margin over runner-up Verstappen. The surprise third place driver was Gasly at McLaren, which is a hugely impressive result for both driver and team, especially as Russell in the other McLaren was 7th in the point standings, and it proves that McLaren were right to bring in Gasly to take over Albon's place in the team. That was one of 7 driver changes for the 8th season as Alfa Romeo again completely changed their driver lineup, and Williams did the same thing as well as Latifi rejoined them, and he's been partnered up with F1's newest driver Yuri Vips. Max Verstappen retired from Formula 1 at the end of the 8th season, again meaning he never raced for anyone other than Red Bull, even in this career mode playthrough. Pierre Gasly took over his spot at Red Bull, and that was one of 4 changes, with the others being Latifi to Gasly's old seat at McLaren, Liam Lawson to Latifi's previous post at Williams, and Lundgaard as the new 22nd driver in F1, racing for Alfa Romeo. That said, he didn't last long there as he was replaced mid-season by Théo Pourchaire. Charles Leclerc took his 2nd consecutive driver's title with Mercedes, but this time his closest challenger wasn't Gasly in the Red Bull as you might expect, given how quick both Gasly has been in previous seasons and how quick Red Bull almost always are. Instead, it was Lando Norris who found some form and was only 48 points behind Leclerc, 103 ahead of his teammate Gasly, and even 11 ahead of Alonso in the 2nd Mercedes. However, the final champion in this wild and crazy career mode was Fernando Alonso. The fact he hasn't retired is bizarre enough, but after losing to Leclerc in the previous 2 seasons, he emerged on top this time with a 50-point buffer. Norris finished 3rd ahead of teammate Gasly in 5th, while Sainz was the leading Ferrari driver in 4th, meaning Mick Schumacher has been the lowest scoring Ferrari driver in every season since he joined the Scuderia. Although, to be fair, he was only 10 points shy of Gasly in the Red Bull. There were 9 driver changes for the final season, and even one during it as Richard Verschoor started the season at AlphaTauri alongside Russell, whereas Yuri Vips ended the season and the entire career mode in that seat. I won't talk through the rest of the changes, but they're on screen now, and this is how a 10 season long, deliberately fast paced and crazy career mode ended. The thing is though, was this career really that different to anything I've experienced before? Apart from the sheer quantity of driver transfers, as there were 21 moves by the start of the 2nd season and 75 total over the course of the 10 season long career, apart from that, I don't really think this was all that different. Max Verstappen still never left Red Bull, which you could argue is realistic and even mostly logical, but that's kind of missing the point. Lewis Hamilton never left Mercedes, although he did only race for 3 seasons. Leclerc joined Mercedes in the 2nd season and then never left them. Norris and Alonso were slightly better as they at least had stints at Ferrari before joining either Red Bull or Mercedes for the rest of their career. The point is, even with these acclaim settings, the highly skilled and highly acclaimed drivers were still very stubborn about who they drove for and only ever raced for top teams and moved teams far less than everyone else. As a comparison, Yuki Tsunoda went from AlphaTauri to Alfa Romeo to Williams, all in just over 1 year, and then competed for Alpine and finally McLaren. That's 5 different teams, that's half the grid. And for the avoidance of doubt, I have just reached the start of the 3rd season in my all 10 seasons of career mode game save, which has everything on the default settings. And there were fewer mid-season changes during the 1st season, although still 4 in total, which is more than I expected. And only 4 more changes for the start of the 2nd season. There was only 1 driver retirement instead of 2, but I really don't think 1 less retirement explains there being 11 fewer driver transfers. The 2nd season didn't have any mid-season changes, whereas it wasn't until season 4 in the different Acclaim ratings career when the season ended as it started. and then the third season started with, again, only 4 driver changes. Really, what EA and Codemasters should do is remove the individual Acclaim earning rate options and simplify that setting down to a simple driver market realism or driver transfer frequency. Something which newcomers can understand immediately without having to understand how the slightly backwards Acclaim system actually works. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like, comment down below, and I'll see you guys hopefully in the not too distant future for my all 10 seasons of career mode video on F1 22.